Events, the calculated, cold-blooded attacks upon our law enforcement officers, where we lost truly good men. That leaves us with a lot of questions, a lot of frustrations, a lot of emotions. That leaves us with a deep sense of loss and hurt. We as a nation together mourn. We have to learn and understand, even when we have a sense of frustration and anger, that we direct that in the right ways, in the right directions, so that we don't allow it to root inside of us, turning into bitterness, where it begins to control our decision making and areas in the process of our life. Yes, we feel a great loss. We feel a sense of even disbelief at all that has been happening. Jesus helps us understand this a little bit in John 10:10. He says that the thief has come to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But then he affirms to us that he has something better for us than that. He said the thief has come to steal, kill, and destroy, but he said, I've come that you would have life, that you would have life abundantly. There's a great loss that we have experienced. It comes to most of us very personally. So as a people and as a nation, it hits us all in a very profound, yet a very indescribable way. So we're here today because in our nation there is a great evil that is trying to take from us. It's trying to take our common decency. It's trying to take our common sense. It's trying to take our common care and concern for our fellow man. It's an evil of division that produces a separation instead of unity. It produces a fruit of self-interest rather than communal mindedness. See, we as a nation and as a people, we can never really forget where we've come from. Because if we forget where we come from, then we lose the compass that helps direct us to where we need to be heading. It is a fact, undisputable, that America has been one of the most blessed, it's been one of the most self-sacrificial people, nation. It's been one of the most prosperous nations ever on the planet. But when the blessed, when the prosperous no longer recognize their source of where our blessings come from, then we become, ungrateful. And in our ingratitude, it eventually evolves into greed. Then greed is driven by self-motives, and we see that happening throughout our land today. See, when we eliminate God from our national conversation, we begin to eliminate our ability to publicly proclaim and recognize the source that produces true peace, that produces true healing, that gives us the ability to move forward from the days that are past. It gives us the ability to walk with a sense of wholeness or to find some measure of happiness again. It removes, our love for our fellow man. And what happens is we lose our conscience. The psalmist writes in 33:12, blessed is a nation whose God is the Lord. You know, every day, hundreds of thousands of brave men and brave women, they get up every morning and they strap on a uniform. They kiss their kids, they kiss their wives, they kiss their husbands goodbye, and they head off to work, not really sure what that day will hold. And now, even more so, not really sure if they'll ever return back to that home again. But you know what? They do it anyway. Day in and day out. And why do they do it? They do it so we can gather even here today. So that we can lay in our beds at night and feel safe and more secure. So that we can walk to our place of business, or we can go through the grocery stores, or we can enjoy life as we know it. See, they use their lives, their bodies as shields for each and every one of us as citizens. They place themselves between us and harm's way again and again and again, so that we feel safe in our homes, so we feel safe in our cars as we're driving, so we feel safe when we gather together in a park like this, or when we stroll through our neighborhoods. You see, their jobs are not like many of our jobs. Some of us work in offices, some in plants, some in construction, some in sales, or a plethora of other careers that we have represented in our great region and throughout the nation. See, their job is different. For every first responder, their job is to be, first of all, a protector. Sure, I know. Most of us have had one of those roadside encounters before, when maybe we were in just a little bit too much of a hurry, and we were saying, why me? Wait a minute. But then when somebody blows past us recklessly, we're always saying, well, where's a police officer when you need them? The reality of it is that without our law enforcement officers, without all of our first responders, we would fall into chaos and anarchy, which there are certain groups in this world that is propagating it. See, I've traveled the world. I've been in every state in this great United States. I've been in every continent except one. I've been in more countries than I care to remember. I've been in numerous third world countries where it is not safe to walk down a street such as this, where you lay in your hotel room and you hear gunfire at night, where it is chaos in the streets and people are battling for food. They don't stop at stoplights or stop signs in fear of being carjacked and robbed, or worse. So I get up every morning and I thank God and I pray for all of our first responders, for all of our brave men and women in blue. See, law enforcement is not something that any officer gets involved with because they want to make a lot of money. It's not something any first responder gets involved with because they just needed a job. But it's a calling. And it is a sense of duty and of honor. It's a longing inside of them to make our world a better and a safer place. A better and a safer place for our children to grow up. A better and a safer place so that we have the ability to actually raise a family. To chase a dream. See, our law enforcement officers and all of our first responders are collectively a family. That's right. They're a brotherhood within themselves. And I've had the privilege for many years to walk with that brotherhood. And I've had many personal friends that serve our land as law enforcement, as EMTs, as firefighters, as paramedics, and the list goes on. These are individuals that I have personally witnessed run to calamity rather than run from it. As we just saw in Dallas recently, in Baton Rouge. As others ran from gunfire, our law enforcement and first responders ran into it. Out of a sense of duty, calling, and a sense to protect those that couldn't protect themselves. They run to it without ever a thought of skin color, whether they're brown, black, white, Asian. They just see another human being that is in need, and they respond. Like you, I too, when the first news of the shooting took place in Dallas, I was glued to the television set for a moment. Because I have many, many close friends that work in the law enforcement and first responders area, in that area. As the shots pierced the evening air, one lady that was demonstrating was hit by a round in the leg and collapsed as she was trying to protect her sons. And she bears witness and testimony of 3 officers that covered her without thought of themselves. And while they were covering her to shield and protect her, she saw another officer fall. When I heard of the events unfolding, I too felt helpless. I waited for several hours because I knew it was not the time to call and begin to try to touch base and communicate with some of my friends that are working there. And as I finally got a hold of them, they were in the middle of all of it. And all I did was simply say a short prayer with them. And that's what so many of our brave men and women in blue need, is for a people to pray for them, to support them, to lift them up, and to realize. See, in John, Jesus says this, it's recorded in chapter 15, verse 13, that greater love has no one than this, than they would be willing to lay their life on the line or lay their life down for their friends. Just recently, the horrific event in Baton Rouge. I have numerous officers that I'm very close to there that are more family than they are friends. I received a message from one of their wives instantly that said, please don't contact him. He's in the middle of this and he doesn't need a distraction. He knows you're praying for him. What if all of our first responders just knew we were praying for him? So I want all that are present tonight to hear me. I want all of our first responders and all of our law enforcement officers here tonight to hear me. That your brotherhood has grown exponentially. That it all of a sudden has got a whole lot bigger than you could ever imagine. Because you now have a community, you have a region, and you have a nation that is standing not only with you, but standing in front and behind you. Yeah. For you are not alone. I know sometimes it may feel that way. You're not alone. Because we are one nation, under God, and indivisible. Yeah. So the evil of division cannot stand when we all together stand united. Let me close with this last thought. In Matthew chapter 22, they were trying to kind of check Jesus. The religious hierarchy and leaders of the day, of the moment, were trying to see what he thought was the greatest commandment. And this is what he said it was. He said that you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your strength, with all of your mind. This is the first and this is the greatest commandment. And he said, but the second is just like it, that you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now, upon that statement, it prompted a question. And somebody said, well then, if that is the case, that we are to love our fellow man as ourselves, if we are to love our neighbor as ourselves, then tell me, who is our neighbor? Well, first of all, let me tell you who your neighbor is not in this instance. Your neighbor is not just the person that lives beside you. Your neighbor is not your family. You have to love your family anyway. How many's got that uncle we know, you know? We have to love our family anyway. We just love our family. We deal with it. We make it through it. Your neighbor is not necessarily your best friend, because you're going to support your best friend and you're going to help him out. Let me tell you who your neighbor really is. To manifest this kind of Christ-like love and concern. Your neighbor is anyone or any people group that may deserve judgment, but they need mercy most. And when we understand that, we're able to reach a hand out and to give a hand up. And we're slower to criticize. And we're faster to try to understand one another. And we become more united and less divided. There are people today, and you hear them on the news, that are telling you how divided our nation is. Politically, racial tensions, and the list goes on. And I really think that a lot of them are telling you we're much more divided than we actually really are. Because without that division, frustration, turmoil, and chaos, they have no relevance. Well, I say, in our region, in this land, we let them know that we're not divided. that we are one nation under God, indivisible, because united we stand, and the evil of division is driven away.